What if the most effective intelligence gathered by Nazi Germany on the American home front wasn't from shadowy double agents or encrypted radio intercepts, but from the everyday lives of American women, openly documented in photographs and fashion magazines? During the darkest days of World War II, across the United States, a seemingly innocuous pastime was, unbeknownst to many, feeding a sophisticated German intelligence network. Imagine a crisp autumn afternoon in 1943. A young woman, perhaps in a modest floral dress, smiles brightly for a camera at a USO dance, her new Victory Roll hairstyle meticulously pinned. She sends the snapshot home, or perhaps it's published in a local newspaper. Miles away, in a stark, dimly lit office in Berlin, a German analyst, Lieutenant Klaus Richter, meticulously examines that very image, a magnifying glass tracing the details of her clothing, the background architecture, the bustling crowd. He notes the quality of the fabric, the style of her shoes, the subtle signs of rationing, or the surprising lack thereof. By late 1943, German intelligence estimated that over 70% of publicly available visual information from the U.S. home front contained data points useful for economic and morale assessments. This wasn't a single grand revelation, but a continuous stream of small, seemingly insignificant details. Over the next 28 minutes, you'll discover exactly how this extraordinary form of espionage flourished, undetected for years, and why its overlooked lessons still matter profoundly for understanding the true nature of intelligence today. The conventional image of wartime espionage paints a picture of clandestine operations, spies whispering secrets in smoky back alleys, coded messages transmitted under the cover of night. Yet, German intelligence, facing an insurmountable challenge in penetrating the vast and geographically isolated United States, adopted a far more pragmatic, almost academic approach. They understood a critical truth: an open society, vibrant and democratic, inherently leaks information. The very freedom that defined America, from its bustling civic life to its robust publishing industry, became an unwitting conduit for enemy eyes. Their primary targets weren't blueprints for the atomic bomb or troop movement schedules, not directly, at least. Instead, they sought a comprehensive mosaic of American societal resilience, industrial capacity, and public morale. How were American women coping with rationing? What was the psychological impact of loved ones deployed overseas? How robust was the domestic economy, truly, beyond the official communiques? These were questions that traditional spying methods struggled to answer at scale. By early 1942, the Abwehr, Germany's military intelligence service, recognized the gold mine hidden in plain sight. They began systematically collecting American newspapers, magazines, fashion catalogs, and even personal letters intercepted from neutral countries. This wasn't about daring commando raids or double agents operating in the shadows. It was about meticulous pattern recognition. Analysts in Berlin, often working with limited resources and under immense pressure, developed sophisticated methodologies to extract intelligence from seemingly mundane content. They weren't just looking at pictures, they were dissecting them. A photograph of a group of women factory workers, for instance, wasn't just a morale booster for the home front. To the German analyst, it revealed the uniformity, or lack thereof, in their work attire, the quality of their shoes, the types of machinery visible in the background, and even their apparent physical condition. Consider the meticulous work of Dr. Erich Kort, a key figure in the German Foreign Office's analysis department. His team, by mid-1942, was processing thousands of such visual artifacts monthly. They cross-referenced fashion trends with agricultural reports, correlating fabric availability with crop yields in specific regions of the American South. A sudden shift in dress styles, from silk to rayon, could indicate a disruption in trade routes or resource allocation. The presence of certain accessories, like newly available handbags or jewelry, offered clues about consumer spending and the effectiveness of wartime austerity measures. But the real treasure trove lay within the photographs themselves, especially those showing women in social settings, like community gatherings or recreational camps. These weren't just casual snapshots. They were often published in local papers or distributed through community networks, reflecting a candid, unfiltered slice of American life. The German intelligence apparatus, particularly the branch focused on social and economic indicators, meticulously cataloged these images. They observed not only the clothing, but also the hairstyles, the accessories, the general demeanor of the women. Was there a noticeable decline in new garments? Were shoes showing signs of wear and tear across various demographics? Were smiles genuine, or did they betray a deeper weariness? These subtle visual cues, when aggregated and analyzed over time, painted a surprisingly comprehensive picture of the American homefront's true resilience, or its breaking points. This methodology was a stark contrast to American counterintelligence efforts, which were overwhelmingly focused on conventional espionage threats, saboteurs, radio transmissions, and enemy agents. The idea that vital strategic intelligence could be gleaned from a fashion spread in Life magazine or a photograph of a women's auxiliary camp seemed almost ludicrous, a profound blind spot that the Germans exploited with quiet persistence. The sheer volume of this publicly available information, combined with the American belief that such content was harmless, created an unprecedented opening. What did these seemingly trivial details reveal that conventional intelligence could not? And why did American intelligence fail to see the danger lurking in plain sight? The seemingly trivial details, meticulously collected and analyzed, painted a devastatingly clear picture for German intelligence: a resilient, adaptable, and surprisingly well-resourced American homefront. While American counterintelligence hunted for secret codes and saboteurs, Berlin was building a granular understanding of U.S. societal strength from the ground up. They weren't looking for a single smoking gun, but rather the cumulative effect of a million tiny brushstrokes. For instance, the consistent appearance of new shoe styles in fashion spreads and candid photographs, even those featuring women in factory settings, indicated a robust leather supply chain and manufacturing capability that defied wartime expectations. This contradicted internal German assessments that American civilian consumption would be severely curtailed, leading to widespread discontent. The German Foreign Office, under the astute direction of analysts like Dr. Kort, established a specialized Americastella unit by late 1942. This unit's sole purpose was to process the deluge of publicly available American media. They developed intricate categorization systems, cross-referencing everything from the cut of a dress to the design of a hat. A particular focus was placed on images from community events and, critically, women's auxiliary and civilian defense camps. These camps, often documented in local newspapers and community newsletters, offered a unique window. Photographs from these settings showed women not just in uniform, but in their leisure wear, participating in social activities, often with a sense of purpose and camaraderie. These images, seemingly innocent, revealed invaluable insights. German analysts noted the quality of the uniforms worn by women training for the Women's Army Corps, or the women accepted for volunteer emergency service, WAVES. Were the fabrics durable? Were they mass-produced efficiently? The answers helped inform their understanding of American industrial mobilization. Furthermore, the prevalence of candid photographs showing women in fashionable, yet practical, clothing during their downtime within these camps suggested a level of material comfort and morale that was deeply concerning for the German High Command. It wasn't just about individual items. It was the overall impression of normalcy and vitality despite a global war. Imagine an analyst in Berlin in April 1943, poring over a photograph from a Red Cross volunteer camp in Pennsylvania. He sees women smiling, their hair neatly styled, wearing clean, well-maintained dresses. Perhaps one woman sports a new handbag, another a recently purchased pair of gloves. These weren't signs of material excess, but rather the subtle indicators of an economy still capable of providing for its civilian population, even under wartime strain. This continuous stream of soft intelligence allowed the Germans to build a more accurate, albeit frustrating, picture of American resilience. They understood that the U.S. home front wasn't on the verge of collapse or widespread deprivation, a narrative that German propaganda desperately tried to push. The methodology extended beyond simple observation. German intelligence leveraged a technique they called morphological analysis, which involved studying the evolution of forms and styles over time. If a certain fabric disappeared from fashion magazines for 6 months, only to reappear with a slightly altered weave, it signaled a potential shift in raw material sourcing or manufacturing techniques. This level of detail, derived from sources freely accessible to anyone, provided a continuous, low-cost intelligence feed that conventional espionage simply couldn't replicate at such scale. What would you have focused on if you were an American counterintelligence officer in 1943 trying to spot this unique threat? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. The American blind spot was profound. Their intelligence agencies, primarily the FBI and the newly formed Office of Strategic Services, OSS, were geared towards preventing sabotage, uncovering spy rings, and collecting high-level strategic military intelligence. The idea that a photograph of a woman's new hat or a fashion show within a women's auxiliary camp could be a strategic asset for the enemy was simply outside their operational paradigm. They saw culture, fashion, and everyday life as separate from the hard realities of war. This conceptual disconnect allowed the German America Stella to operate with impunity, continuously harvesting data from the very fabric of American society. The question wasn't if the information was out there, it was whether anyone was looking at it through the right lens. And for years, only the Germans were. This conceptual disconnect allowed the German America Stella to operate with impunity, continuously harvesting data from the very fabric of American society. The question wasn't if the information was out there, it was whether anyone was looking at it through the right lens. And for years, only the Germans were. This advantage wasn't merely academic. It translated directly into actionable intelligence, feeding both strategic assessments and sophisticated propaganda efforts. By late 1943, reports from the America Stella were regularly circulating within the German High Command and the Foreign Office. These documents weren't filled with tales of daring espionage, but rather with meticulous analyses of American civilian life, drawn from a surprising array of sources. For instance, detailed studies of Vogue and Harper's Bazaar weren't just about hemlines. They revealed the continued availability of textiles and luxury goods, indicating a robust supply chain even amidst total war. A particular focus was placed on the advertising sections, which, to a German analyst like Richter, were a trove of information on product innovations, consumer confidence, and industrial shifts. Imagine a German intelligence officer, perhaps a Major Schmidt, presenting his findings in a stark, unadorned briefing room in Berlin. He wouldn't be showing intercepted battle plans, but rather a series of photographs from a women's auxiliary camp in Texas, published in a regional newspaper in August 1944. He'd highlight the sturdy construction of their barracks, the quality of their summer uniforms, and the genuine smiles on their faces during a recreational volleyball game. These weren't just images of leisure. They were indicators of adequate housing, sufficient clothing supplies, and crucially, high morale. They painted a picture of a nation that was not just enduring war, but thriving within it. A stark counterpoint to German propaganda narratives of an American home front buckling under deprivation. The German methodology even extended to understanding the subtle shifts in social norms and expectations. Photographs from civilian defense training programs, for example, showed women learning first aid or aircraft spotting. The way they were dressed, the types of equipment they used, and their engagement in these activities offered clues about the depth of civilian commitment and the effectiveness of national mobilization campaigns. This wasn't about counting tanks. It was about gauging the human capital and psychological resilience of an entire nation. The sheer volume of this open-source intelligence, or OSINT as we might call it today, was overwhelming. Yet the Amerika-Stelle had developed a system to make sense of the noise. One particularly telling example involved the analysis of footwear. Throughout 1943 and 1944, German analysts tracked the types and conditions of shoes worn by American women in publicly available photographs. The consistent appearance of new, stylish, and practical shoes, even in images from factory floors or volunteer camps, signaled a robust domestic leather industry and an absence of severe rationing in this crucial sector. This detail, seemingly mundane, directly contradicted German intelligence estimates that predicted significant shortages in vital materials. It forced a recalculation of American industrial capacity and resource allocation, effectively undermining a key strategic assumption about the duration and cost of the war for the Allies. This stream of granular data provided the German High Command with an uncomfortable truth. The American home front was not cracking. Its industrial base was strong, its population resilient, and its morale surprisingly high. This wasn't the image of a struggling nation ripe for collapse, which German propaganda desperately needed to project. Instead, it was a picture of sustained strength, built on the everyday lives of its citizens. The contrast between this reality, gleaned from seemingly innocuous photographs, and the American counterintelligence focus on traditional threats reveals a profound strategic miscalculation. What deeper implications did this overlooked intelligence have on the German war effort, and how did it influence their strategies in ways we rarely consider? The implications were far more profound than simple propaganda fodder. This wasn't just about confirming what they already suspected. It was about dismantling deeply held German strategic assumptions. The bedrock of German war planning against the United States rested on a crucial yet flawed premise: that America's vast industrial output, while impressive, would come at the cost of severe civilian deprivation and plummeting morale. They believed the sheer logistical strain of a two-front war, coupled with the demands of an industrial war economy, would inevitably lead to widespread discontent and a fracturing home front. This was the narrative their propaganda machine relentlessly pushed, hoping to sow discord and weaken Allied resolve. But the steady stream of soft intelligence arriving in Berlin from the Amerika-Stelle told a different story, one that completely inverted this premise. It wasn't just contradictory, it was fundamentally undermining. What Lieutenant Richter and Dr. Kort's teams uncovered, photo by photo, fashion plate by fashion plate, was an American society not only enduring the war, but adapting with remarkable resilience and even a degree of material comfort. The image of a nation on the brink of collapse simply did not materialize in the visual evidence they meticulously gathered. This wasn't about a single grand reveal, but a continuous, undeniable pattern. Think of it like trying to assess the health of a vast, complex organism. Traditional intelligence was like examining its vital organs, its industrial heart, its military brain. But the Germans, through their unique lens, were observing its skin, its hair, its everyday movements. They saw the subtle glow of health, the signs of good nutrition, the confident posture. While American counterintelligence was focused on the internal mechanisms, the Germans were reading the external manifestations of its overall well-being. This provided a crucial advantage. The impact of this inversion was undeniable. By early 1944, internal German intelligence reports, especially those from the Forschungsamt, research office, began to reflect this stark reality. A classified analysis from March 1944, for instance, specifically noted that evidence from civilian photographic material consistently indicates a higher level of public welfare and morale in the United States than previously estimated, impacting projections for war duration and enemy resolve. This wasn't a minor adjustment. It was a fundamental recalibration. The data, drawn from thousands of seemingly innocent images, forced the German High Command to confront the fact that their enemy's home front was not a weakness to be exploited, but a source of enduring strength. This new understanding had far-reaching consequences for German strategic thinking, shifting their focus from waiting for an internal American collapse to preparing for a prolonged conflict against a deeply resilient adversary. The implications extended beyond mere morale assessment. Detailed observations of women's fashion and photography inside camps provided concrete data points on resource allocation and industrial capacity. The consistent availability of certain fabrics, the quality of mass-produced garments for auxiliary services, and even the prevalence of leisure items not directly related to the war effort, all painted a picture of an economy capable of sustaining both a massive military machine and a relatively comfortable civilian population. These weren't speculative estimates. They were visual facts, meticulously cataloged and cross-referenced. The America Stella even tracked the subtle seasonal changes in fashion, correlating them with agricultural cycles and manufacturing. For example, the widespread appearance of new cotton prints in spring 1943, even with rationing in effect, indicated a healthy textile industry and robust supply chains, directly contradicting German assumptions about material scarcity. This level of granular detail, derived from sources American intelligence deemed irrelevant, provided an unparalleled look into the very sinews of American power. Hold on to that detail for a second, because it completely redefines everything that comes next. That granular detail, the subtle yet persistent evidence of a thriving civilian textile industry, was more than just a data point. It was a conceptual earthquake for German strategists. It forced a reevaluation of the entire American war effort. The initial German premise that a nation could not simultaneously wage total war on two fronts and maintain a robust civilian economy without severe internal strain crumbled under the weight of countless photographs of women in new dresses and stylish shoes. This wasn't about a single catastrophic intelligence failure. It was about a slow, undeniable erosion of a core strategic belief, picture by picture, fashion spread by fashion spread. The America Stella's findings, often compiled into comprehensive reports by Lieutenant Klaus Richter's team, highlighted a critical truth. American resilience wasn't just about factories churning out tanks. It was about the social fabric, the underlying morale, and the seemingly boundless capacity of its population to adapt. By mid-1944, these reports were influencing high-level discussions within the Oberkommando der Wehrmacht, OKW, Germany's high command. They began to understand that the United States wasn't just an industrial giant. It was a deeply integrated society, capable of maintaining a semblance of normalcy and comfort even under wartime duress. This understanding, gleaned from what American counterintelligence dismissed as trivial, meant that a quick victory through internal American collapse was a fantasy. The war would be a protracted, grinding struggle against an enemy far more robust than initially assessed. Beyond strategic reassessment, This unique intelligence stream also refined German propaganda. When the narrative of American deprivation and impending collapse proved untenable against the visual evidence, the focus shifted. German propagandists, now armed with a clearer picture of American civilian life, began to highlight what they perceived as American materialism and decadence. They pointed to the continued availability of certain consumer goods, the prevalence of new fashions, and the apparent lack of widespread hardship as evidence of a superficial society detached from the true sacrifices of war. This was a sophisticated pivot, attempting to use America's perceived strengths, its consumer culture and economic dynamism, as psychological weaknesses. It was a testament to the depth of insight the America Stella provided, enough to not only understand the enemy, but to twist that understanding into a new form of attack. Consider the meticulous analysis of accessories. A photograph from a women's auxiliary camp in rural Kansas, published in the Kansas City Star in October 1943, might show women knitting or reading during their downtime. German analysts wouldn't just note the activity, they'd scrutinize the quality of the yarn, the type of knitting needles, the style of the eyeglasses, or the design of a personal handbag. These weren't war materials, yet their consistent presence and quality spoke volumes about the underlying industrial capacity and distribution networks still serving the civilian market. Dr. Eric Kort's team, by late 1944, had built an extensive catalog of such observations, cross-referenced with pre-war production data to track subtle shifts in material availability and manufacturing priorities. They understood that the very openness of American society, its robust local media, and its vibrant consumer culture inadvertently served as a vast, decentralized intelligence network for them. The internal resistance within German intelligence to these soft findings was initially significant. Traditionalists, accustomed to hard military intelligence, found it difficult to accept that a fashion magazine held more strategic weight than an intercepted military communique. However, the sheer volume and consistency of the visual evidence, coupled with the methodical analysis of figures like Richter and Kort, eventually became undeniable. The Forschungsamt, a key German signals intelligence agency, began integrating these findings into their broader assessments, creating a more holistic, if unsettling, picture of the American adversary. This quiet revolution in intelligence gathering forced a re-evaluation of what constituted valuable information in wartime. While American counterintelligence remained fixated on conventional threats, the Germans were exploiting a profound blind spot, a conceptual chasm between what was perceived as dangerous and what was actually strategically revealing. This fundamental oversight allowed the Amerika Stella to operate effectively in plain sight, harvesting data from the very fabric of American life. But how deeply did this unconventional intelligence truly penetrate German strategic decision-making, and what were its lasting implications for the conflict itself? The unconventional intelligence, meticulously harvested from the everyday lives of American women, didn't just penetrate German strategic decision-making, it fundamentally reshaped it. It didn't lead to a sudden dramatic operational shift, but rather a slow, undeniable erosion of core assumptions that had guided German strategy for years. The belief in an America on the verge of internal collapse, a nation whose vast industrial output would be crippled by civilian deprivation and plummeting morale, was systematically dismantled, photograph by photograph. This wasn't a failure of American strength, but a failure of German perception, corrected by an intelligence methodology so subtle, so counterintuitive, it remained virtually invisible to their adversaries. By late 1944 and into 1945, the intelligence flowing from the Amerika Stella had solidified into an inescapable truth for the German High Command. They understood that the United States was not just a formidable military opponent, but a resilient society with an almost boundless capacity for adaptation and endurance. This forced a systemic change in their strategic outlook. Instead of holding out hope for a domestic American uprising or a critical weakening of the home front, German planners had to accept the grim reality of a prolonged, grinding conflict against an enemy whose very social fabric was proving to be an unbreakable shield. This realization, born from observations of fashion and photographs, undoubtedly contributed to a more pessimistic assessment of the war's ultimate outcome within the highest echelons of the Third Reich. The impact also cascaded into propaganda. The initial German narrative, painting America as a struggling nation on the brink of collapse, became untenable against the visual evidence of a thriving civilian society. German propagandists, armed with the America Stella's insights, pivoted. They began to twist America's apparent resilience into a narrative of materialism and moral decay, arguing that the continued availability of consumer goods and new fashions showcased a society detached from the true sacrifices of war. This was a sophisticated, if cynical, attempt to weaponize American civilian strength against itself, a testament to the depth of understanding gleaned from these unconventional sources. The very openness that defined American society, intended to fortify the home front, had inadvertently become a quiet, persistent conduit for enemy eyes, revealing both its vulnerabilities and its profound, unexpected strengths. This overlooked chapter in World War II espionage forces us to reconsider the very nature of intelligence. It's a powerful reminder that the most critical insights don't always come from encrypted messages or daring commando raids. Sometimes, they emerge from the seemingly mundane, from the patterns of everyday life, openly displayed for the world to see. The profound blind spot within American counterintelligence wasn't a lack of effort, but a conceptual one. An inability to imagine that a photograph of a woman's new dress or a fashion show inside a civilian camp could hold strategic significance. This conceptual chasm allowed German analysts like Lieutenant Richter and Dr. Port to operate with impunity, building a comprehensive mosaic of American societal strength that traditional intelligence methods struggled to replicate at scale. The story of German spies delighted by American women showing photography and fashion inside camps isn't just a historical curiosity, it's a timeless lesson. It reveals that in an increasingly interconnected and open world, the most potent intelligence often lies hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right lens to interpret it. It challenges us to look beyond conventional threats and consider how our own societal openness, while a source of strength, can also be an unwitting source of critical information for those seeking to understand or undermine us. The true nature of intelligence is not always found in the shadows, but sometimes in the vibrant, documented life of a nation. If this deep dive into an overlooked corner of wartime intelligence has opened a new window for you, subscribe now to not miss the next chapter of Untold Spy Stories. Leave a like to let me know you want to keep exploring these hidden histories, and tell me in the comments below what part of this story surprised you the most. I'll be reading and bringing those insights into our next discussion. And if you're curious about how other seemingly trivial details reshaped the course of history, perhaps we should explore the secret intelligence gleaned from enemy postage stamps.